I think a lot of us, especially those of us who are devout Catholics, we have that worry in the back of our minds about our loved ones who have strayed.
Yeah.
Will they find their way back to God?
Right.
And the story we're diving into today, it really offers some powerful reassurance on that. It's the story of Herman Cohen, a Jewish piano prodigy who converted to Catholicism and then eventually became a Carmelite priest. But it's even more than that, right? It's a story about God's mercy and the power of prayer, even when things look really impossible.
Yeah, what's really fascinating about Herman Cohen's story is it isn't just about his own spiritual journey, like you said, but it's also about how that ripples out
Oh, yeah.
and how one person's conversion can have a huge impact on those around them, particularly his mother.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. His early life, it almost reads like a novel. I mean, this kid was composing symphonies in diapers, right?
Well, maybe not quite in diapers,
Mhm.
but you're not far off. By age 4, his talent on the piano was undeniable. By 11, he was performing concerts in major European cities.
Wow.
A true prodigy. Everyone showering him with praise, recognizing him as a musical genius.
So he was destined for life on the grand stage.
Absolutely.
And any ambitious artist, they set their sights on Paris,
Right.
the epicenter of the music scene at that time. I mean, I can just imagine him and his mother, full of hopes and dreams, arriving in this bustling city.
And they hit a roadblock right away. The Paris Conservatory won't let him in.
Oh, no.
Simply because he wasn't French. Can you imagine?
I know. Talk about a disappointment.
Yeah. But this setback actually leads to an incredible opportunity.
Okay, this is where things get interesting. So his mother, super determined, right? She manages to convince Franz Liszt himself, the Franz Liszt,
The one and only.
to take Herman on as his student.
Not just any student.
Yeah,
Liszt's favorite student.
it's almost unbelievable.
I know, right? Liszt was so impressed with Herman's talent that he gave him this nickname, Pudzi.
Pudzi.
Yeah, it was a term of endearment that actually Liszt had received from his own teacher.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this young Jewish boy finds himself immersed in the dazzling world of Franz Liszt, surrounded by all these artists and intellectuals, right?
It's like a who's who of the 19th century.
Hmm?
Writers like George Sand and even more controversial figures like Abbé de Lamennais, who had actually been excommunicated from the church.
Oh, wow.
And they're all drawn to Herman's charm and his talent. What an environment for a teenager to be in.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But amidst all the glamour and the worldly success, something really profound was happening within him. So a seed of faith is planted in this seemingly ordinary moment. Liszt playing the organ in the Freiburg Cathedral, right?
Yeah.
He's playing an improvisation of the Dies Irae.
The Dies Irae, that famous sequence about the Last Judgment.
Yeah, talk about powerful stuff.
It is. And for Herman, this musical experience, it wasn't just an artistic performance. It was a spiritual awakening. He later described it as a moment where he felt like he'd found himself, almost like the prodigal son returning home.
It's amazing how music can do that, right?
Yeah.
It can open us up to a reality beyond just the material world.
Absolutely. But this experience, it didn't lead to an immediate conversion. He continued to travel, he performed, achieved a lot of success, even spent some time in England.
England's going to be important later, right?
It is. It comes back in a surprising way.
Okay, so the seed is planted, but it takes time to blossom. So what happens during those years that nurture that seed? I mean, what leads him to formally embrace Catholicism?
Well, alongside the triumphs came challenges.
Okay.
He developed a gambling habit, which led to financial difficulties.
Oh, no.
And even a period of estrangement from Liszt, his mentor.
It's a familiar story, right?
It is. Talent and temptation. They often go hand in hand.
Yeah. It's that classic struggle between the worldly and the spiritual. The pull of success, the allure of the darker impulses. But it's often through those struggles that we actually find our way back to what matters.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened with Herman. During this time of inner turmoil, he starts to feel drawn back to that experience in the Freiburg Cathedral. Starts attending Mass regularly. He's feeling this pull he can't explain.
I can only imagine the conflict.
Right.
To come from a Jewish background and then embrace Catholicism, that's a huge step.
It is, and that's where Father Legrand enters the picture.
Okay.
He was a priest who saw the sincerity in Herman's searching and patiently instructed him in the Catholic faith.
So Father Legrand, he becomes his spiritual guide,
Exactly.
walking him through all the complexities, the doctrines, the practices.
Think of Father Legrand as like a gentle shepherd,
Yeah.
guiding Herman through all this unfamiliar territory.
Right.
And eventually this journey, it culminates in Herman's baptism, August 28th, 1847.
August 28th.
Ah,
The Feast of St. Augustine.
you got it.
Oh, that's so fitting,
It is.
given St. Augustine's own dramatic journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Herman even took the name Augustine Marie.
A clear sign of his admiration for that saint.
It's beautiful. Both men, brilliant and driven, and they find solace and truth in the Catholic faith. But Herman's story doesn't end there. I mean, he's still got this incredible musical talent. His past life, it needs to be reconciled with his newfound faith. So what happens next? How does he navigate this new chapter?
Yeah, so we left off with Herman, newly baptized as Augustine Marie, and trying to figure out how to blend his musical past with his Catholic faith. I mean, I can imagine that was tough.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't a simple transition.
No.
But he didn't reject his past. Instead, he kind of used it as this bridge to his future. He spent 2 years teaching and performing, and that culminated in one last concert to pay off his debts.
Oh, wow.
So this period, it's like this stark contrast to his former lifestyle. He's embracing simplicity.
And that really mirrored his growing spiritual depth.
It's a powerful statement, right?
Yeah.
Using his final performance, not for personal gain, but to actually clear his debts.
Yeah, it really speaks to how sincere he was. And, it was during this time that his devotion to the Eucharist really, really blossomed.
Okay.
He was so moved by, the real presence of Christ, the Blessed Sacrament, that he felt compelled to share that devotion with other people. And this led him to found the Association of Nocturnal Adorers.
Wait, the Association of Nocturnal Adorers.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm familiar with Eucharistic adoration, but I've never heard of that. Tell me more.
It's really pretty remarkable. So Herman, he organized these group of men who would take turns praying all through the night in adoration of the Blessed Sacrament.
Wow.
So this practice, which had kind of fallen out of favor, it was revived through his efforts. It just shows how deeply he understood the gift of the Eucharist and the need for constant prayer.
It makes you think about those anxieties we were talking about earlier, the worries about our loved ones who are far from God. Herman's dedication to this, his belief in prayer, it does offer a sense of hope, doesn't it?
It does. And for Herman, this dedication to prayer, it wasn't just a solitary thing.
Yeah.
It was connected to this deep longing for his mother's conversion.
Right, his mother. She was always there in his life, even after his conversion. And I imagine it must have been heartbreaking for him that she never really embraced Catholicism.
It really was. It was a constant sorrow for him. And he just poured his heart out in prayer for her, consecrated her to the Immaculate Heart of Mary countless times.
Wow.
It's almost like foreshadowing for what happens later.
Okay, now you've really got me on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So after these 2 years of teaching, paying off debts, what happens next? Does he enter the Carmelite order?
He does. He's free from those financial obligations, so he follows that call he'd been feeling. He enters the Carmelites in 1850, embracing a life of prayer and solitude. And, remember his time in England?
Yes.
Well, that comes back in a surprising way.
Okay, so this is more than just a personal transformation. It's about how his journey affected the wider church.
Exactly. So Cardinal Wiseman, a really important figure in the church in England at that time, he invites Father Herman to come over and reestablish the Carmelite order, which was a huge task because they had been absent for centuries.
Wow, that's quite a responsibility.
It is.
So he's not just, a monk praying in a monastery.
Right.
He's actively working to rebuild the church. So what did that look like in England?
Well, he arrived in London in 1862, limited resources, but he was determined. He establishes a new Carmelite priory, even organizes a public religious procession.
Wow.
Which was a big deal, right? Because it was the first of its kind for Catholics in England since the Reformation.
It's like he's reclaiming that space.
Yeah, he really is.
For Catholicism in a place where it had been suppressed for so long.
It must have been so challenging, but exhilarating at the same time.
Absolutely. But amidst all these achievements, that internal struggle, it was still there, right?
His mother.
Yeah.
Even with all his successes, that longing for her to find faith, it must have just weighed on him. It did. He never gave up hope, even as she was approaching the end of her life. And this is where the story takes a really unexpected turn. But before we go there, I think it's important to really stop and consider the significance of his dedication to his mother's conversion.
I agree. And, it connects to what so many of our listeners are probably feeling, that fear that their loved ones might die without embracing the faith. So what can we learn from Father Herman's approach? How can we apply this to our own lives and our own anxieties? As we're talking about this, Father Herman's concern for his mom, it makes me think about my own family, my friends, the ones who haven't embraced the faith. It's always there, that worry, but also that hope that maybe somehow they'll come back to God.
It's such a human concern. And I think Father Herman really understood that. He just never stopped praying for his mother, even when it seemed impossible. And this is where his story, it brings this incredible message of comfort, especially, for those of us who have those same anxieties.
Yeah. You're talking about his mother's deathbed conversion, right? The one that was actually foretold by St. John Vianney.
Well,
okay, I'm ready. Tell me everything.
Okay, so it's one of those stories that it really kind of stretches our understanding, but at the same time, it reinforces, just how boundless God's mercy is and the power of intercession. So remember, even with all of Father Herman's prayers, even that act of consecrating his mother to Mary, she died in 1855. And she hadn't formally converted to Catholicism. He was actually away preaching at the time.
Oh, wow.
And he gets the news. It must have been devastating.
Devastating to dedicate your life to something like that, to the salvation of souls, even your own mother's, and then to face that loss. I can't even imagine.
Years later, he's talking to the curé of Ars, St. John Vianney.
St. John Vianney, the patron saint of parish priests.
Wow.
And he confides in him about his sorrow.
What did St. John Vianney tell him?
His words were kind of, cryptic, but hopeful. He just said, hope, you will receive a letter one day on the feast of the Immaculate Conception, and it will bring you great consolation.
So 6 years after his mother's death, he receives a letter on the feast of the Immaculate Conception. Okay, I've got chills. What did it say?
It was from a woman, very pious woman, known for her writings on the Eucharist, and she describes this mystical experience that she had, a vision, where the Virgin Mary interceded with Jesus for Father Herman's mother at the moment of her death.
So even though she didn't formally convert, Mary pleaded for her soul. I mean, it's incredible, right?
It's amazing.
It shows the power of a mother's love, but also the Blessed Mother's role as our advocate. And what she says to Jesus in this vision is powerful. Pardon and mercy, she says, "Oh, my son, for this soul who is going to perish, just another instant and she will be lost for eternity. I beseech you, do for the mother of my servant Herman that which you would like to be done for your own if she was in her place and if you were in his."
Wow. That's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
The love, the urgency, her compassion. It's amazing.
And remember how Father Herman had consecrated his mother to Mary? It's like he entrusted her soul to Mary's care, and it seems like she really took that seriously.
So what happened? Was his mother's soul saved?
Yes. In the vision, Mary's plea was answered. His mother was granted this powerful grace at that last moment, and she made an act of faith and hope in Jesus.
This story just gives so much hope, especially for those of us who worry about loved ones who strayed. God's mercy is beyond anything we can grasp.
Yeah.
And Our Lady, she's always there, ready to plead for us before her Son.
It reminds us to trust in God's plan, even when we can't see it, and to never, never underestimate the power of prayer, especially when it's united with Mary's intercession.
Okay, so we've covered Father Herman's amazing life, the transformation from prodigy to priest, his work in the church, and this incredible story of his mother's salvation. It's a story that I think really touches all of us.
And there's so much more to his story. But for now, let's leave our listeners with that image. Mary, our mother, pleading for a soul right on the brink of eternity. Even when all hope seems lost, God's mercy, through Mary, it triumphs.
Such a powerful reminder to hold on to for all of us who are carrying anxieties about loved ones. It's a story that pushes us to pray, to never give up, trusting that God's love can reach even the most distant hearts. Well, thank you for taking us on this deep dive into Father Herman Cohen's life. It's definitely made an impact on me.
It's a powerful one, and I hope it inspires all of us to live with more faith, more hope, more love, because even when things seem impossible, God's grace can work miracles, especially through Mary's intercession.
This has been such a fascinating exploration. Faith, mercy, the power of prayer. It's just incredible. Till next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.